Good morning. Welcome to the Working Wellbeings podcast. We've got Carol Hickson here from Carol Hickson Training. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you. Excited.
So, for the benefit of our audience, do you want to introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm Carol, and my background is therapy and life coaching and teaching. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to just to share really, really good information about mental health and sort of the psychology of being human. And so I developed lots of courses for the workplace where we can listen a little bit, as you were talking to your previous guest, educate people, have intelligent conversations and set intelligent expectations around how we support mental health and resilience in the workplace.
Yeah, set intelligent expectations. What does that mean?
Well, I think sometimes maybe employers get people in to do that mental health and resilience training, and the expectation is all set on the employee. And I think that's important. And I think sometimes employees think this is a thing that the company needs to be taking on board, whereas actually the intelligent thing is that we've got to do it from both parties, and we've got to make sure that we're looking after each other and we're protecting the business, we're protecting the individuals.
Absolutely. I like to call that a systemic approach. That's what I'd love businesses to do, like take a systemic approach, which basically means looking at all different levels of the organization, right?
Yeah.
So what's your background? What drew you towards this line of work? Have you always done it? Or?
No. I a big background. So let's start with sort of more lately.
Let's start with school. No, no, I'm only joking.
Yeah, so cool. I got so many O levels. So let's say big life events happened, and in my 40s, I decided I was going to retrain as a teacher. And as that happened, my health got in the way. So I did become a teacher, and then I became a therapist. And the drivers are stuff that happened to me in childhood, chronic pain, and now that's kind of chronic pain and chronic illness as I'm aging, and chronic insomnia. And there was no help for me. And, very much viewed by the GPs, as I was seeing at the time, as very much a mental health or emotional health conditions. And so not really treated as they should have been as physical illnesses. And so I just decided initially I was going to set up an insomnia website, and I was going to help people, and I was going to educate them on insomnia and maybe give them some of the help that I feel that I didn't receive. And then just one day went into a training group for emotional freedom technique.
No.
Tapping, the...
Oh, yes, I've heard of that, yep.
So went to this group, was still teaching, but went to this group just because I'd seen it online. And, well, I was a blue badge holder at the time.
So.
I had no pain at the end of that session.
Really?
It was just the most incredible thing that had ever happened. Yeah. Did that qualification. And then somebody said, so then now I'm a therapist in this. No, I had no intention of becoming a therapist.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn about pain and the brain.
God, yeah.
Somebody said, if you want to learn more about the brain, become a clinical hypnotherapist. So did that.
Okay.
And somebody else said, if you want to learn more, do this. And so I've got about 9 modalities now. Yeah, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Then wanted to share it with as many people as I could, set up a community group in our local town. If you look through a window, we look like a Keep Fit group. Mm-hmm. But actually I was teaching them about the mind. I was teaching them about resilience. I was teaching them about their nervous systems. And then COVID hit. And I got so many, emails and messages saying we couldn't have got through COVID without the tools and techniques you taught us. Mm. And so I wrote a book. And the book that's my book, The Resilience Template, 7 steps, thank you, to improve your mental health.
Yeah.
And the premise is that I think sometimes we forget is the traditional model of working with mental health is that we try and change mindset, we do affirmations. But what I was seeing in the therapy room was there was a big step we were missing.
Okay.
And the step was the preparation step. And so I always use this because I'm a hypnotherapist, I think in metaphors. I always think you walked into your living room intending to decorate the living room. You've been to B&Q, you got all the stuff, you walk into the living room, the room's on fire.
Right.
In the way we traditionally work with mental health, we would just carry on with the decorating. We'd carry on with the affirmations and the mindset. Yeah. But what I realized working with clients is we need to put the fire out first. We need to understand our nervous system. We need to get people to reconnect with their own bodies. Right. And then we can reassess and see what needs decorating.
Yeah. It's a really strong metaphor for it, isn't it? Yeah.
And if I'm honest, this isn't a story about what happened to us, but we were doing some decorating at home, and we had a couple of.
The room wasn't on fire, was it?
No, almost.
Oh,
but we had a guy came and asked to quote, and he came with his wife, and we were like, "Oh, we're not sure. We think we found the person." And the guy said, "Please, I've recently lost my child. He took his own life. I really need the work." And so we were like, we've got to give him the job. I came home one day from work and he's got one of these electric guns on the front door and he's scraping the paint off. Mm-hmm. But literally the rubber mat beneath him with all our posts still on it was in flames.
Oh my gosh. Right.
And I think that's where that analogy or that metaphor for me always sits, because he literally did not feel that the mat was in flames wow. at his feet. He was so caught up in his own head, in his own grief, that he just didn't even know what was happening that close to him. And so I think what I've learned is, if we don't start with the nervous system, we're just decorating, a room that's probably never going to, be the way we want it.
Got you. It's interesting that I love the way that you describe what you do there, and resilience as well, because resilience, I'll be honest with you, I think is had a bit of a PR crisis in the last couple of years.
Me too.
Or wrongly so, rightly so in some ways, wrongly so in others. So the main issue with it is, and I've seen organizations unfortunately do this, is it's a way of shifting the responsibility solely onto the individual. You need to toughen up. You need to be more resilient to be able to deal with this terrible job that we're making you do. Whereas I would say, as a business psychologist, sort the job out. Work on the individual as well, but sort the job out. And you're obviously advocating for a much more holistic approach, right? Where everybody's got a responsibility. Yeah. So do you still think resilience is a useful phrase in that context, if we just understood what it meant properly?
I mean, there was a point when I thought, oh, why did I choose that word? Because like you say, they become overused. They become probably not used in the context you hoped they would be used. I do think it has a value, but I do also think we forget human beings are resilient.
Oh, unbelievably.
And that's in our DNA, and so it's that, again, sometimes I think, it's one of those things that we do with people. We kind of judge them on their resilience. You see loads of social media posts where people are saying, well, I'm resilient. You're not resilient, And where I come from is, we're all resilient. You wouldn't be here. Your ancestors are resilient. That's why you're still alive. So this is a muscle we just have to keep building, I think.
Yeah.
So he's trying to keep away from that modern narrative and the way words get taken up and perhaps used slightly differently.
Yeah, it's a shame in many ways, because like you said, I'll be asked to do resilience sessions, and then I'll use that as a guise to get in and actually talk about how do we fix the workplace. But resilience comes up, and the people's, let's talk about individuals and how they're dealing with pressure and these sorts of things.
And let's stop judging them when they're not dealing with pressure the way we think they should be dealing with pressure, because one of my really big things when I go into the workplace is I like to talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experience, because I've built a life, but the foundation was with the ACEs that I have. And let's start having those kind of conversations as well, because I do find that I do butt heads a little bit sometimes with organizations, because it isn't a level playing field. It never was. but we can really absolutely bring everybody on in our workplace when we do it properly.
Yeah, agreed. And we spend so long there, 90,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
In our lives. So we need to sort it. Hence events like this,
Yes.
as contributing to that.
Yeah.
So talk to me about. I saw in your literature, you're into psychological safety. So talk to me about psychological safety. What is it? Why does it matter? Yeah.
Well, you know what? This is quite sad in a way. I was talking to my partner, and I said to him, "Do you know what I've realised? I've got to 61 years of age, and my life has been built on fear."
Okay.
Okay, and again, it's going back to ACEs. It's that some of us have never felt truly safe in either in our own bodies, trusting our own judgment, trusting that self-imposter voice in our head. Some of us have never felt safe. Some of us live in fear. We work from a place of fear, and you can see it all the time in the workplace. There might be a rumor about redundancy, and it as far as the management are concerned, when they're ready, they'll talk about that. But the fear's already building. The fear's already affecting everybody. And particularly if you're more vulnerable to it, depending on what you've already experienced in your life. So I think when we talk about psychological safety, we have to understand that we're programmed to fear, and it would be so much more useful if, when leadership teams were making decisions, they based it on what we understand about human beings, so that we didn't just leave the gaps. Because I always say, if you leave the gaps, it's a bit like digging a hole in the sand. If you don't put a big rock in it or something to secure it, sea's going to come in, sand's going to fill, there's going to be no hole.
Yeah.
We human beings put assumptions in. A lot of them are based on fear. So if we can give our people information. I did a course for a company, transitioning through change. They asked me to write it for them. Did the course. Very good course. Got great feedback. One of the leadership team said at the end to me, "We got it wrong, didn't we?
Right.
We should have done the work, we should have done work with you pre the course." So the leadership team wanted to educate the staff. But there was a step before. We're back to preparation, that first partner step in my book. We needed to prep the leadership team so that they understand about fear and rumor and worry in the workplace when they're letting little bits of information come out, but not actually allaying the fears.
Yeah. So practically, what can they do to alleviate that fear?
I think in the first instance, we've got to get better at communication. And again, I'm seeing this an awful lot in the workplace. I'm kind of astounded that managers, for example, aren't trained to understand the learning styles of all the people in the teams. That for me is missing an absolute trick. They're trained to look at weaknesses rather than strengths. And also I heard you talking to the last lady about empathy. Delivering training for the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising the week after next on empathy.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost a lot of empathy at the top of our businesses for various reasons. And I think you asked a question about Gen Z. How does a 50, 60-year-old CEO actually understand the fears and put himself in the shoes of these young people, and also have some kind of modicum even of understanding about what they've been through and what they've experienced? I think all of that helps us to reduce fear in the workplace.
Yeah. It's a good answer. Improve communication. Yeah, you've got to get people talking. But that's when the psychological safety comes in, because even the step to be able to communicate is a difficult one, because you fear there. If I share something in terms of vulnerability, well, then it will affect my career negatively, or this person will think that about me, or whatever it might be. So but then we need to communicate about that. We need to communicate about that fear. It gets a bit meta, right?
Exactly, yeah. But basically, one of the fundamental questions is your workplace a place where people think or believe that they can express an opinion without it being held against them? And and like I was saying in the in this empathy course that I'm doing, ruinous empathy. Seem to be speaking to coaching lots of people at the moment, because I offer training in the workplace, but I'm also, and for a lot of companies, I'm a coach. And a lot of people are coming up and they might be saying something like, I've been put on performance review. And I'm kind of like, okay, did you have any idea that was coming? No one's talked to me. So ruinous empathy, where we're not having those early conversations with people. We're not saying, do you know what? You are the most amazing addition to our team, but we do need to get your skills up on your PowerPoint, for example. Instead, we're kind of going away and maybe fixing their mistakes and not telling them. And then several months down the line, because again, we're not communicating with them regularly. We're not checking in with them regularly. We go, oh yeah, you've not achieved your KPIs or the stuff from your last appraisal. We're gonna have to put you on performance review. Straight out of the blue. What?
Yeah.
That was a whole conversation that we should be teaching our managers to have way down the line.
Yeah.
And also being able to know that the people who work in our teams can say, I'm actually having problems with this. It is an area that I could, and instead of us saying, yeah, okay, what course do you need? What help do you need? I'm just seeing it all the time coming up in coaching calls.
Yeah. The other side of it, and get your thoughts on this. Do you think there's a dark side to empathy? Do you think it can sometimes go too far? I've met individuals, I sometimes feel I'm too bloody empathetic. Take the weight of the world on my shoulders and other people's issues onto my shoulder. Do you think it can go too far? Do you think there's a...
Yeah, and I think again we've got a problem because you hear so many people, and I deliver training for mental health first aid, and people will come on the course and there's a couple of reasons where I butt heads with people, but one of them is when they say, oh, I'm an empath, I take everything on. But when you actually investigate empathy, the first step to empathy, the first step to developing empathy so that I can be a better work colleague for you, I have to know me. I have to self-regulate my emotions. I have to not take the world on my shoulders. I have to be self-aware about me. And, like when those thoughts come in, well, they're my thoughts. I have to own them. So I think there is a problem around this misconception that empathy is just taking on your sorrow and your sadness. And I think there's another point to it that sometimes we forget. Some of us aren't good at taking on other people's happiness. Somebody's got something to celebrate, and do we give them the time to go, oh, that's amazing, you must feel good. What does that feel like? We're not often good at helping people celebrate their empathy.
Yeah.
In an empathetic way.
That's an interesting one. Or even just celebrate successful stuff. I see that within teams and organizations where, they'll spend all day, what went wrong? What can we fix? Rather than saying that went really well. But it's almost like, well, that went well, so we could just move on.
It's that thing, isn't it? And about, like the human mind, the statistic, is it something like for every one negative, we need 7 positives to balance everything up.
Yeah. The magic ratio. Barbara Fredrickson.
Yeah. In the book we talk about the magical number 7 as well. But it's that idea that we can spend months on something that's gone wrong. This colleague comes in and says, "Oh, you'll never guess what, I've just got this," and we're like, "Oh, great, well done, back to work." We don't spend months celebrating the good stuff, and that's again, I think, is something that as organisations and in the workplace we could do better.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I said, I butted heads sometimes on the MHFA training, is some people who would describe themselves as empaths then say, I want to do the course because I want to fix people. And I am like, no, because nobody needs fixing. We all get stuck. We get stuck in old patterns and old behaviours. But there's a little bit of ego there then if we think we're there to fix other people.
Yeah. Plus, you can't fix them. You can't fix people like that. Very rarely, even if you're talking to a trained professional, is there something that they say or tell you to do that suddenly solves all your problems. The solutions come within you, and the good therapist or coach is about how do we get those solutions out and how do we allow you to recognize those things. They can't tell you, I'll do a 3-mile run, you'll be all right.
Exactly. And that's the fundamental part of clinical hypnotherapy as well. we have the resources already in us. We're already resourceful people. We just have to locate them, especially when we're not tuned in with our bodies. We just have to locate those. But we do have them. I always think the kintsugi people. I'd love to meet up a graphic designer. Kintsugi.
I love kintsugi. Yeah, the smashed pots and the yeah. Sorry, you can explain it better than I can.
Well, it's this Japanese art, isn't it?
Yeah.
So an old anxious version of Carol, beautiful pot, drops it. That's now for the bin because anxious people are usually perfectionists. But kintsugi would be, I take the pot, I glue it together, I gold leaf the cracks. How amazing is that? I gold leaf the cracks and I celebrate the cracks. And that's what I say to my clients. We're kintsugi. We've got cracks. And so I just want to meet a graphic designer who could do my image with my cracks, and show people it's the cracks that show where we've come in the world and how strong and how resilient we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in the power of human resilience. I remember, this is going back a few years, this is a terrible anecdote because I can't remember the guy's name, but I saw an amazing talk by one of the journalists who was kidnapped in, was it Lebanon? And chained to kept hostage for five years, I think it was. And he had this incredible story of human resilience, like nothing I'd ever heard. You could hear a pin drop in the room and you're thinking to yourself, like, how did he survive that? He said, I've got no idea how I survived that, but I did, I did. And but then you see it every day in workplaces and
you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons that ACEs are so important to me, that adverse childhood experience, because you know what? Those people carry that in their baggage, if a lot of times, and then they do a day's work and then they build a life. And sometimes I think we forget that they're the resilient people, the people who are carrying, whatever they're carrying, whether they are living with neurodiversity or whether they're living with childhood developmental trauma or whether they're somewhere in between. Yeah. It's the people who just go, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a bad day as well. Because that toxic positivity,
Ooh.
absolutely.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Tell me about toxic positivity. I've come across it, but yeah.
It's just that whole, because we're uncomfortable, aren't we, as human beings? We're uncomfortable when somebody else is not in a great place. So we try and distract them. We try and make them smile. We say things like, oh, it could be worse. I'll actually, just for today, please let me sit in my own sadness or in my own pain. I like a speaker, I think his name is Michael Bernard Beckwith, and he says, pain is inevitable, but suffering is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. And I love that. But that toxic positivity often comes, when people don't want you to even process the pain. It's kind of like...
Or acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it, and let's push it down and distract, and let's not deal with it. I just think, let's honor the pain. Let's process the pain. Let's not keep it in the backpack with everything else.
Got it, yeah. So we talked about some pretty heavy subjects so far, but would you describe yourself as an optimist for the future of workplace? What do you think the next 5-10 years has?
Yeah, I think so. I do. I think that I see two types of companies when I go in. I see the leaders who were sitting, with those on the shop floor in the training, and I see the leaders who kind of go, mental health's for them, it's not for us. And I think that's where we need to get through to, that mental health is for absolutely everybody in the organisation. Yeah, of course I'm optimistic. Got brilliant people like yourself and I who are just really trying to share the science and share really practical solutions for people. And yeah, absolutely optimistic about it.
Great. At least one of us is. No, I'm only messing. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic as well.
I've backed the wrong horse then, have I?
Not at all. So I definitely can't let you go in. I picked up one of the books before, the Resilience Template, but there's also another one here. I'll shut the camera. So what's all this about?
Well, if you look on the back of that book, you see two dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are dogs.
Yeah.
And so we got these pup beasting in COVID. And I don't know if you know, but there's a problem for pups born during COVID. Just like a lot of children were affected socializing, so were dogs.
Yeah.
So we got this one dog behaviorist out, and he's very anxious around people. And she said, I don't know if you've ever heard of fight or flight. And I'm like, oh, it's my job.
A little bit.
Yeah. And so she said, he's experiencing fight or flight. And it just all made sense then. All the worries that Beeston has, I thought, well, we could put them in a book aimed at children, 6 to 12. And his older sister, who's a very, very sensible bordoodle, teaches him the techniques that I teach to my clients, ways to regulate his nervous system, basically. And we do it for children. So we do things like emotional freedom technique to London's Burning.
Yep.
We sing the song, and we do pass the parcel. We throw an item from hand to hand, reminding ourselves to stay calm. So we recalibrate the brain. And Beeston's a book for children filled with techniques, but they're also all true, the stories, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this picture of us in there, which is quite unnerving. How an illustration it sees you.
No, I love it. I love it. I've got a 7. He's just turned 7. 7-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Okay.
So yeah, they're right in that
Yeah.
that kind of age bracket, aren't they?
Well, take the book and see what they think. But yeah, for the very first time, I did a World Book Day. Went to a school last week and had the hall full of children doing emotional freedom technique, tapping to London's Burning.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
To get our kids to understand how they calm the nervous system.
Yeah, it's giving them tools, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know everything. The answer to everything is it should be taught in school, but like mental health absolutely should be taught.
And it is in other countries. And when I qualified, the first thing I did was wrote to every school in my part of Cheshire where I was then and offered to go in for free because I'm a former teacher. Not one school took me up.
Wow.
We're back to fear a little bit. Fear of, well, what's she going to do with them and what's, to me, if we don't understand it. Children last week absolutely loved tapping.
Right.
And like I say, so it's got some really sensible tools that we can help people take responsibility for by doing them a few minutes a day. I think it's really important, and not just doing it once a day. Embedding it to habits is what I'd say in the resilience template. Every time you boil a kettle, recalibrate the brain. You use both sides of the brain.
Got you.
Every time you clean your teeth, do your mirror neurons. Yeah. Gaze into your own eyes and tell yourself how amazing you are.
Yeah. Habit stacking, right?
It is,
Stack new habits on the
on
the existing ones.
Yeah.
I love all that.
Because that's what I realised in the therapy room. Clients were really struggling. In the room, they do it with you, don't they? Yeah. But as soon as they leave, they'd forgotten it all again. So let's stack it to habits, and then let's put these. And I always do 21-90 rule. So I reckon it takes almost 4 months to properly embed a habit.
Got you.
So
Got you.
So
Got you.
yeah.
Great. So before I let you go, are there any questions that you wish I'd asked you today? I mean, we've talked about quite a lot, in fairness.
No, I don't think so. I'm just very, very grateful that I heard the lady before, because I just thought that was so interesting to hear her and to hear the kind of questions you were asking. She was amazing. I want to go and find her and tell her how amazing she was.
Yeah, so that was Carissa. She's the editor of HR magazine. So yeah, she was amazing. Yeah. Really, really good. As was this. And the final question is, where can people find you? Give yourself a plug.
Excellent. Well, we're on stand 19 here until the end of the day today. You find me on carolhickson.co.uk. And yeah, that's probably the best way. I'm on TikTok, Carol Hickson Mental Health, Facebook and Instagram, and trying to get better at being consistent with chronic illnesses and posting on social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, just trying to learn how to do it all better.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other episode, I think, social media and how to do that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Leave that for another time.
Yeah, certainly. But yeah, carolhickson.co.uk.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Cheers.